Hello and welcome everybody to another episode of Strickland. I'm your host, Shwin and this is episode 455. I'm joined, as always, by my co-host Stacy. That is at StacyPen89 on Twitter. Stacy, how you doing?
Doing pretty well. Victory, Thursday.
Yes, victory Thursday now. Victory Wednesday night last night. Knicks beat the Raptors 112-298 in a game that was not even really as competitive as that final score indicates. We're going to talk about that. They snapped a 3-game losing streak, which we'll also talk about. But before we do that, I do have to make a few announcements. First, being that Strickland has a YouTube channel where you may be watching this podcast. If you are and you've not done so already, please hit like, subscribe to the channel, leave us a comment. That'd be a huge help to us. The Strickland also has merchandise, which you can find on our website at www.strick.land. There's a link that'll take you to the merchandise store. And there's all kinds of cool stuff on there, like t-shirts, sweatshirts, hats, coffee mugs, water bottles, you name it, we've got it. The Strickland also has a Patreon, which you can subscribe to. There are a number of different tiers. There's a $6 tier that gets you access to Pod Strickland, the podcast that hosts Friday with Prez. You also get access to Takes from Abby's Bozos, podcast hosted by Andrew Steele, a.k.a. Doug, along with Zach Blatter, and you get access to the Strickland Discord with conversation never stops. There are further tiers. There's a $9 tier that gets you access to Strickland Roll, my solo pod where I rant and rave about the Knicks even more. You also get access to wonderful premium articles by Matthew Miranda, one of the best in the business, and you get access to Strictly NFL, which, you guessed it, is a podcast about the NFL that is hosted by Konstantin Metrikos and Desmond Novak. There are further tiers. There's a $15 tier, $30 tier, $50 tier, and $100 tier. Those come with a variety of additional benefits, like listening in on pod recordings, merchandise discounts, and even potentially co-hosting a podcast alongside yours truly one day, whether you choose to subscribe or not. None of this would be possible without you. And none of this would be possible without BetOnline. BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform, your number one source for online betting. From the earliest odds to in-game live betting, BetOnline provides you with all the action and the ability to watch the games as they happen with the largest selection of odds on everything from football, NBA, NHL, to entertainment and political props. Head to BetOnline today to get in on the action with America's most trusted site for online wagering. BetOnline, the game starts here. I did a post-game show yesterday, so I gave my thoughts on the Knicks, on the Raptors, on individual players. But, Stacy, I am curious to get your thoughts, I guess, starting with the Knicks. What did you think about their performance yesterday? They snapped a 3-game losing streak after I thought, I guess I haven't even talked about these games. I thought a lot was made of the OKC Chicago back-to-backs that were not that concerning to me. OKC, obviously, they beat the Knicks, but I thought the Knicks performed really, really well through 3 quarters, and ultimately their lack of depth and the Thunder's abundance of it tilted that game. Yes, Jalen Brunson did not have a good game. Yes, their offense stalled down the fourth. I think a lot of that you need to give credit to OKC versus simply just saying the Knicks stalled out and whatever. But either way, yeah, the Knicks did not get the victory, and that's something that they need to do against one of these elite teams, and as far as elite teams, I'm specifically talking about the OKC, Cleveland, Boston crust of teams, who I think have separated, obviously, from the rest of the league. So that's fine. I understand being upset about that. I also think that's a consequence of a lot of things that are out of their control for this season in some ways, but they'll get their shot on Friday at home, which should be more favorable. The back-to-back against Chicago, I don't really know what to say about that. It was a back-to-back. They clearly were gassed towards, especially to start the second half. You could see it. Chicago took advantage of that. And they got hot, man. Kobe White made a lot of bullshit in that game that I don't really know what you're supposed to do about it. And it is what it is. I understand the concerns people have about minutes and wear and tear and all those things. And obviously Cat, coming up with the knee a little bit at the end of the game was not great to see. But I think that was one of those where you're like, yeah, hey, I think it's a schedule loss. And I guess if the criticism is, well, it's a schedule loss, so just use your depth and try and keep the burden down on these guys on the second night of a back-to-back, fine, fair. I'm not going to get into the whole minutes thing because I just think that's, well, not right now anyway. And then I thought the Magic game was bad. They were not good. Brunson didn't look sharp, and he didn't look like, not just not decisive, but forced up a lot of bad shots. And then, from there, it was like they didn't take any threes. They didn't generate threes. It was a bad offensive performance. Defensively, I thought they were fine. I mean, I know it's not great when Wendell Carter and Cole Anthony and Anthony Black are kind of like taking you to school, but 103 points in the modern NBA, even against a team that depleted, you're usually going to win the game. But obviously they did, and that is because of their listless offensive performance. Which, look, fair enough. You want to put that on Brunson. I think that's fair to say that he's got to be better in those situations. So anyway, but yeah, they bounced back last night, 112-98 victory. I don't know what your thought is on all of that, maybe in totality.
I mean, the Oklahoma City loss was frustrating at the time because they built a lead, 14-point half point. I mean, the first half, they looked every bit the part of a contender. They were outplaying Oklahoma City, generating really good shots against the league's best defense, by their best defense, I think, by a substantial margin. And OKC proved the benefits of continuity and being a contender. And, we talked about that game before as a measuring stick. And I think it proved two things. It proved that this is not the same team that just got run off the floor against Boston. It also proved that this is still a team that's gelling and learning to deal with a different level of adverse situations in the fourth quarter. I think they've generally, of late, there's been a little bit more issues with Brunson getting trapped, but earlier in the season, I thought they were doing a great job. I think I saw someone say, well, the difference is Hartenstein was a way better passer than Cat. I don't see that at all. I think Cat is pretty good in those scenarios. I would like him to shoot a little bit more off the traps than kind of do his Geronimo drives, straight line, and just barreling. I prefer it to Julius Randle spin moves, but I thought, you saw that, okay, they've definitely gotten to a point where they can execute against good teams, closing out games, adapting against a team that can lock up the way Oklahoma City can late in the game is the next step, right? So in that sense, look, this is a team that's beyond moral victories or good losses. It sucks to lose a game like that, but again, if we're measuring the progress of this season, taking a step back, getting a good night of sleep, and looking at that game, you look at it as, okay, they made progress. I can tell you, the first game of the season, they weren't going to play that well against Oklahoma City. I think the Chicago loss, I echo your sentiments. They're clearly gassed. Brunson bounced back a little bit, 33 points. Cat had a big game, but they couldn't defend. And Chicago at 23s. I think they shot 50% from three or something like that.
I want to say they were 20 of 37. I could be wrong on that.
I mean, there's very few. I mean, you play your best. And there will be people who say, well, yeah, but a lot of those were open threes. That's fine. And look, that's a team that's beat us twice. They are. I think, did we play them on the back-to-back the first time too?
I don't remember. It's possible. I can check.
I mean, they're. I don't know what their standings are, but they still have some talented players. They can go 5 out. They have Levine, who I think is quietly having a pretty solid season, considering a lot of talk around him.
We did play them on a back-to-back, right? The night after we played in Philly.
Yeah, so I mean, those games are going to be tough, and they're a solid team that can cause some problems for the Knicks. We've also lost twice to the Hawks, so things to work on. But you can't take too much from a game where, and it was also beyond the physical kind of component of the second game of back-to-back. That was a game you can tell they prepared very hard for against Oklahoma City and invested a lot. And to say, well, we can't be emotional about a regular season loss, that's fair, but you can tell, they call them trap games for a reason. I don't think this was quite a trap game, but I do think the level of focus the Knicks invested in OKC may have depleted them mentally a little bit as well. I think the only game that was really disappointing, to your point, was Orlando. And it went, let's talk about it. Brunson has had a couple of rough games of late, and it's starting to become a topic of discussion. This is still a guy who should make the All-Star game. I think his overall stats, he's scoring less, but still, the stats still look really good overall. 25 points, 7.6 assists, over a 3-to-1 assist to turnover ratio, 48% from the field, 39% from three. I don't know what that. So his true shooting is still 59.7, which is the highest it's been in New York, actually. Um, so on the surface, things definitely appear like this is still Jalen Brunson. He's adapted a little bit more to playmaking. But this is a couple of games in a row where there's just the decision making looks off. It's since his calf injury. I don't think it bothered him last night, but the decision making, it's either tentative or tunnel vision. He's not taking a lot of threes. I think if I ask, are you concerned about Brunson? I think your answer will probably be the same as mine. It's like this guy's gone through bad stretches. He's gotten better every year. We know his mentality. It's tough to be concerned with a capital C there. But these are a few games where some chatter has started, and it's warranted. This is not the level that we've come to expect from him.
I am honestly not worried. I think he's definitely been more inconsistent this year, and that's fine. Like I think that's like not even that. Not that even that it's fine. It's accurate. He's been more inconsistent this year than in past seasons, and I don't think that's just like in game to game production. I think even within games, he's been more inconsistent. I don't have any numbers to back this up, but anecdotally, it feels like his end of quarter, end of half, end of game possessions are more muddled and not as clean as it has been in past seasons. So that stuff is concerning because it speaks to some type of decision making, mental approach issue, perhaps. And it's possible that's not just down to him. It might be that's what maybe it is a strategic thing that they need to sort out. But ultimately, it falls on him. And it's fair game to criticize him for all of that stuff. And it's fine if, heavy lies the crown. If you're going to call him a top 5 player, like I and many others did after last season, because he played at that level, as far as I'm concerned. I thought he was the third or fourth best player in the league last year. He has not played at that level this year. And do I think like push comes to shove, who do I trust more in end game clock situations, Brunson or Cat or whatever? It's going to be Brunson. But so far over the course of the season, I think you would have to say Cat's been the team's best player. And that's not really an indictment on Brunson because Cat's been great. But you are almost, or at least I can't say you or we or whatever, I am almost waiting for Brunson to get to match that level consistently. We've seen the games, we've seen the flashes, we've seen the halves, we've even seen stretches, but it has not been consistent in the way that we were accustomed to last year for sure. So that's just what it is. And I think I'll put it this way. I am not going to sit here and poo-poo the ridiculousness of every time Tyrese Halliburton struggles, we have to hear about his back and the bed he's sleeping in and, every fucking excuse in the book. Yes, Jalen Brunson might be feeling the effects of a calf strain. Guess what? You're on the floor. Like, that's it. You're on the floor. You have chosen to play through this. And that's commendable and that's fine. But I can't just be like, well, he's playing through it, so that's all it is. Because I don't think that's all it is. I don't think his reading it, for example, I thought against Chicago in the second half, OKC at times, Orlando, there were some issues and shot making stuff that you're like, okay, maybe that's a calf thing. Maybe that is, he's not feeling it. But yesterday, I didn't watch him and feel like that was really an issue. I think his decision making was a little muddled, to say the least, off kilter in some ways. Shaq's, who does work for the Strickland, he posted a little clip where he talked about how teams are blitzing him more, and the Knicks they need to do a better job of figuring that out. So it's not just entirely on him. And I think that's fair. But I also think he's the guy who's bringing up the ball on every possession. So at some point, he needs to understand what's happening and direct things to make it easier on himself and for the team. So I do think, well, yes, maybe Tibbs can do better or whatever, and other guys need to read the game too. It ultimately falls on Brunson. And the other part of it is he took a three yesterday early in the game. It was like a kind of a not a transition pull up, but he got a pass in transition and he took a three right off the catch. It was off. He didn't take another three the entire half. He didn't take a three until the third quarter. He had a step back, and then he took one other three, which he missed, which was a late clock step back in which he had a better opportunity to take a step back because it was a failed possession, not on Brunson, but he was the bailout. So he got the ball with whatever it was, 6-7 seconds left. He had the opportunity to take a step back right then, passed up on it, then did the fake drive to his left, and then he pulled back and had to take a more difficult step back to end the possession, which missed. And that, to me, was indicative of what I see from him a lot recently, where he is not decisive. He is not taking the initial opportunity. He's trying to, let me try and cross this guy up one more time. Let me create a little bit more space. Let me, he's not playing with a clear idea in his head, in my opinion anyway, of what he wants to do, what the defense is giving him, how to attack it. I think he's he's being overly deliberate. He's a deliberate player anyway. That is like how he operates, but he's being overly deliberate. I think he is overcomplicating situations that don't need to be overcomplicated. Hey, if you have Grady Dick on a switch, do you want to know something? You don't need a fucking screen. You don't need a screen. And when you call
that Dick,
okay, you don't need a screen. You can just attack it. Like, you don't need to draw a second defender to the ball, give them an opportunity to trap you. And now the possession is, now you need Cat has to read that or whoever. And it's a different possession. Like, you already have a mismatch. Why are you calling for a screen? This is a guy, even, as much as we can talk about his weird possessions to end games and stuff like that, and some of his recent struggles. Last time I checked, I think he's still one of the leading scorers in ISO this year. Like 1 point, I want to say it's 1.09 points per possession. Like, you have to trust yourself. And right now, to me, he doesn't look like he trusts himself. Now, if you want to say that is because of the calf, maybe. But again, he's on the floor. And I didn't think he looked physically burdened yesterday. Really not yesterday. Against the Magic, maybe, sure, whatever. Yesterday, absolutely not. I thought his defense was actually really good yesterday. I thought he was moving well. I thought he was really sharp, fighting over screens, switching, making rotations. Is that different than obviously taking pull-up jumpers and shit of that sort? Sure. But he's on the floor. So I can't, I'm not going to just use the it's his calf, it's his calf, it's his calf. Like, I'm not going to do that because even during this stretch, I think since his calf first started getting listed, I believe he's averaging, so over his last 3 weeks or something, he's averaging 25, 7 and 3, 7.5 and 3 on 56 true shooting. The biggest thing is his 3-point shot has just deserted him. And you know what? You go through a slump as a 3-point shooter, that's fine. What you can't fucking do is just stop taking them. And that is what he's done recently. It's like, I missed my first 3, now I can't take another one. He took 1 fucking 3 against the Magic. What is the point of that? Do you understand? And so this is where it all compounds me, because it's like, maybe it's the calf, but if you're not going to take the 3, now it makes everything so much easier to defend, because teams are like, he's not going to take the 3. He's not taking that pull up. So we don't need to be too cognizant of it. We don't need to be in danger of it. We don't need to be worried about it because he's not taking it. You have to take that shot. You have to take it. And this is not the first time this year I have felt that he is kind of for whatever reason, stopped taking a steady diet of pull-up threes. We were talking about this earlier in the season as well. So, maybe it's the calf. I don't know. I'm not a doctor. I have no idea how that's affecting him. All I know is that if he isn't taking that shot, forget what he's hitting it at. If he's not taking the shot, that's a problem for the Knicks, and that's a problem for him, because it's going to make everything he wants to do inside the arc more difficult too.
Yeah, I mean, it's just first of all, if we want to beat those top teams, the math cannot be a big discrepancy. Discrepancy. Wow. And he's one of the Knicks' best 3-point shooters. They're not playing a lot of non-shooters, but the reality is he has to get them up somehow. This is a guy who can shoot off the catch. He can shoot off the dribble. He needs to be able, to your point, he needs to be able to score again without a screen. I think looking at the entire season, and this is, I think, I'm curious how much this happened, like the second half of last season and the second half of the season before, once he got downhill to that paint, whether it was the turnaround, the fadeaway, kind of the floaters, like he was automatic within that 16 feet range. Just a lot of tough shots where you're not, for like any other player almost, you're like, oh, that's not a good shot. For him, he was money, right? That turn away over his elbow, those have been, like last year I was like, that's going in. This year it's, and I think that if I remember correctly, I think that was probably, it seems like it was the case the first 2 seasons, where it'd be a little bit more hit or miss in the beginning of the season, and then the second half is when he just is lights out there. So I think that's part of it, where he can't hit tough shots the same way he has been for most of his career. And so, that can affect your entire confidence, right? I do think probably part of it is he's trying to get other guys involved, right? So this is a new team. He has another superstar next to him. Maybe it's not a coincidence that his game really took off when it was all on him. The second half of those seasons with Randall getting hurt. But he's also trying to get Bridges involved. They're running more stuff for OG, for better for worse. So I think that's part of it. I think with the traps also, it's, again, it's worth noting. One, this is a team that sometimes they've cooked traps, sometimes they haven't, right? Cleveland can attest to that. Miami at times could attest to that. And they really switched their strategy and just let Vincent stay on an island during that playoff series. But, it is kind of, it feels to me like, okay, you have Cat as an outlet. You have Bridges as an outlet. You have Hart as an outlet. These are all guys who are really good in a 4-on-3 situation. I think that down the stretch of that Oklahoma City game, what was puzzling was they would trap Brunson and then nothing would happen. I think they took away the first read, pre-rotate, and their coverage was so great, and it was an experienced team that's done these kind of things. I mean, it's experienced in the sense that they've played together quite a bit. And that's where, is it a Tibbs thing? Is it just the guys getting used to each other, right? I mean, early in the season, people probably forget about it just given how insanely effective Brunson and Cat have been. And it's not like they weren't effective in pick and roll, but early in the season, if you remember, there were times where like Cat would just not be in the spot where Brunson was expecting him, or Brunson would read what Cat wanted to do wrong. That takes time too. And I think once you master the 100 level course in it, it only gets harder against a team like Oklahoma City. But getting back to Brunson, I think there's been, I mean, he's still a young player, and every star has games where the process leaves a little bit to be desired. I think there's been games in the playoffs where Jokic is passing too much. No, Jokic isn't being enough of a playmaker, right? And I'm not saying Brunson is that good. We've seen Giannis's process get criticized a lot. We've seen obviously Luka, right? Too ball dominant at times, not aggressive enough. No, I don't think Luka's ever been criticized for not being aggressive enough. But Anthony Edwards, you're seeing a lot of that kind of scrutiny now, right? So there's many ups and downs. I think when we zoom out on this season, that part of it is going to be just a blip, at least with how much they've struggled. Because I mean, the trajectory of this guy's career has been, these are always blips, and he figures it out and he gets better than he was before. But it does leave the question of, are they going to be able to adapt? Is he going to be able to adapt when things get switched up in the middle of a series against Boston or Cleveland or Oklahoma City? Because those teams are experienced, versatile, and are going to throw different stuff at the Knicks. And especially with the lack of continuity, with still a lot of new faces, even OG at this point, I'd consider, still adapting a little bit. but I think a game like OKC is good for that, right? Games against the Magic, right? I mean, for all the injuries they have, this is still a very tough defensive team. I think in the long run, it's good for this team to face as many different kinds of adversity as possible. And and I think that we'll see with Brunson, but I think the shot making will improve over the course of the season as it has, and that's usually what unlocks everything for him.
Um, yeah, I mean, I'd probably say that it's good to face the adversity. It is good for them to face these difficult defensive teams and see what works, see what doesn't, see what they have to get better at. And yes, they're adjusting to each other. I mean, I think there are a couple of nice feel good articles yesterday prior to the OKC Cleveland game about how Kenny Atkinson had talked to Donovan Mitchell and told him, you need to let the offense flow through Evan Mobley more and blah blah blah. Like, I think, and think about that. Donovan Mitchell had played for 2 seasons prior to Kenny Atkinson's arrival with Evan Mobley and Jared Allen and Darius Garland. We have, I mean, not just us, plenty of people talked extensively about how, you know, Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland, do they fit together? Evan Mobley, Jared Allen, is this something that works? Like, and it took them 2 years and a coaching change before that all really coalesced. And look, if you want to say Garland and Mobley are younger, so they had more scope for individual improvement and shit like that, fine. I don't think it's just about individual improvement. I think it's about harnessing that into a collective, cohesive vision. And there are times, and I think this is a fair thing. Like, it's chicken or egg type of thing, but it's like, well, nobody can create an advantage consistently aside from Brunson. Therefore, Brunson has to kind of initiate everything all the time. Okay.
Are they doing, to that note? Sorry to interrupt. Are they doing enough? I get that Cat is not, a perimeter creator like a Jokic or Giannis, I guess. Um, are they doing enough though to leverage his gravity, and he can be a creator in many ways more than just putting the ball in his hands, right? I mean, is that kind of the solve here? I know they've been using Bridges more to something you had asked for earlier in the season, but curious if they're max. I mean, it's crazy to say, are they maximizing a guy who's averaging 26 and 13 or whatever it is? But maybe that's the solution in some of these scenarios.
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's what I was kind of getting to is I think that, you know, maybe Brunson doesn't need to initiate everything, or there are ways to get Brunson advantages by getting him off the ball and then getting him on it. I mean, we saw that plenty last year, obviously with Hartenstein, and obviously I understand Cat is not the same player as Hartenstein; they're very different, obviously. Um, but like, can you put the ball, in Cat's hands at the top of the key, and now run Brunson off of screens and whatever? And they've done some of that. They try it. They like to do the thing where, Brunson dribbles out to the right, Cat comes out to the top, Brunson will throw it to him, and then they'll run a dribble handoff. Like, they do shit, but it's not. To me, that's like not really what we're envisioning, and it's not. I don't want to act like everything Cleveland is doing now is the perfect and ideal thing, and nothing we should all be copying them. But like, you playing through your bigs is different than just like utilizing your big. And I think we can do a better job of playing through Cat at times, even when Brunson, and definitely when Brunson's on the floor. Even as good as they are together, I think there's ways to do it that are more, that maybe allow Brunson to operate more off ball. And we have seen that at times, which is why we've seen games where, you get 30, 35, 40 assists even, right? Because guys are playing off Cat. He opens up the floor, and now you got cutters open and everything. Like, we've seen this stuff, and it's about getting it done consistently and cohesively. And yeah, like, yes, Brunson is the best advantage creator, but does that mean that you don't you? I think yesterday, you can check me if I'm wrong on this. I'm pretty confident McCall ran one pick and roll yesterday. He took a pull up midi, he missed it. Um, that why is that just one? Why is that one? Like, that's one, like one possession. That's That's it. Like, that's all we're going to get from that. I think you have to, especially right now, right? Brunson is both maybe physically limited, but more importantly to me, just a little not seeing the floor great, a little off balance, off kilter, sped up, whatever you want to say. Like, maybe this is when you need to perhaps, not some guy, maybe giving him more reps is eventually how he gets right. Whatever. I think generally guys just go out through ebbs and flows and they'll eventually figure it out, especially in a case like Brunson where the track record is the track record. But like, you need to kind of, isn't that an opportunity where it's like, all right, you know what, you're good, like we're fine with you, but let's maybe try and get you an easy off ball look. Like, why don't you go spot up in the corner? Why don't you go spot up at the top of the key and get that going? And also, again, like, I don't want to just keep bringing, but Brunson himself again has to be better, because to me, like, it is one thing to struggle with your decision making and whatever. It's another thing when I see plays where, to me, it feels like I don't even know if it's a lack of confidence, but almost like he's so aware that he needs to get other guys involved that he isn't being aggressive and or decisive is probably the better, like, he's not with operating with a clear plan of action. And there's stuff like small stuff. I brought this up on the rundown yesterday, but there was a possession yesterday where I don't remember who saved it. Might have been Hart, might have been OG or whatever, whoever it was. I think it was Hart. Hart gets an offensive rebound, kicks it out to Brunson. He's wide open on the wing, absolutely wide open, can line up the seams. He has all the time in the world to take three. He swings it to Cat at the top, who's also wide open. Cat hits a three. Boom. Great. Awesome. Fantastic. That's one where I'd like to see Brunson shoot that. Like, you haven't made a shot in a while. You've been kind of hesitating, not confident from three. When you're wide the fuck open and you're as good as he's been over the course of his career as a catch and shoot player, like, I want you to shoot that. I prefer you shoot that. And there's just a lot of, like, there's possessions in general where I just think it's like, and this is the balance and the kind of decision making I'm talking about, where it just feels like sometimes he's veering too hard into, like, I need to pass the ball. And then there are other times where it's like he's decided he's going to shoot it. So then it's a balance. And that balance seems to be the kind of root of his inconsistency this year. Whereas I think in seasons past, even when he played Randall is a very different player than Cat, right? Where it's like Cat can coexist with Brunson. They play off of each other, and that's awesome. Like, we see that natural two-man chemistry with them. Sometimes that natural two-man chemistry means that Brunson's decision-making has to be clean, whereas and it's more complex because he's got a wider decision tree. Whereas with Randall, it's pretty simple, right? Randall gets the ball, I go spot up somewhere. Like, I find space off the ball, I make myself available for a catch and shoot three, and that's what it is. Like, it was not, he didn't, how many pick and rolls do you remember him and Julius running together? You know what I mean? And if they did, what was it for? It was usually like to get a switch for one of them, right? It wasn't like they were playing off of each other in a very connective way. So in some ways, I think the last couple of years where his decision trees have been a lot simpler because the talent has dictated it as such. That might have made things easier, and therefore his consistency, which is his hallmark, has been better than it has been this season, where it's felt like, awesome 2 weeks, not so awesome week, not so awesome couple games, awesome 5 games, not so awesome couple games. Like, it's been a lot more up and down, and even within games, right? Against Chicago, what did he score? 30 in the first half, then he scores 3 in the second half. Like, so you see these wild swings with him where it just feels like a player who knows he can distribute, knows he can score, and he's trying to figure out how to do both of those things consistently throughout the course of a game, in the optimal fashion with the team that he has around him.
Yeah. I mean, I do think there's been games in the past where he's had poor decision making. I think the way you put it is like, yeah, like he is kind of, I guess, full-time quarterback, or he is kind of the driver, more in that role with Cat than than with Randall, where it was more of a not quite take turns, right? But it was the he wasn't always the guy making the decision, right? So there's more on him, and he's adapting to that. But it's also just like, why is Bridges like an afterthought? I mean, everybody's still adjusting to the roster. I do think his pick and rolls have upticked. I think he's up to like 1.7 per game. I think it was like below one at one point. I definitely agree that they should be running more there. But we talked a lot about Brunson. I do want to get your thoughts on something you tweeted yesterday. So, I mean, we can talk about Brunson. As you mentioned, the depth is probably the biggest issue right now. I think for the most part, I'm less concerned that I hear like a lot of people be like, no one on the bench scores. Yeah, but Tibbs does a pretty good job staggering, and when those guys play with starters, they the lineups generally win. Having said that, you're taxing your starters quite a bit, so it'd be nice if there was someone who could table set. You mentioned that Brunson's really the only guy who can create. Campaign, I think all in all has been a good signing, but or certainly for a min. Has had a couple of rough games, and you mentioned, I think, at this point, if Tibbs is a little bit out on Payne, or he doesn't do exactly what Tibbs wants on offense, it might be time to give Kolek a shot. And you're not usually, I don't think you've been the last couple of years someone who's like a play the kids above all guy. So it's interesting to see that, because I do know there are people who there is like a contingent of fans who just want Kolek to play, but curious if you want to expand on that a little bit.
Yeah. So just gonna pull up campaign's game log here. 1 second. Campaign. Since this is his stretch since he scored 19 points in 15 minutes against the Raptors on December 23rd. 5 minutes, 6 minutes, 6 minutes, 7 minutes. Played 36 minutes against the Jazz. That was the game where Deuce and Brunson were out. 8 minutes, 14, 12, 11. This is not a player who seems to be in the good graces of Tom Thibodeau or has much trust from Tom Thibodeau. I don't really know what that says. Other, like, I don't know. Like, if those are your minutes, then you're clearly not doing something that he cares for. Now, it's possible. Just gonna throw it. It's possible some of this has to do with Deuce missing time as well. But Deuce has missed 5 games consecutively now. So like this stretch of him playing less, it started before that. It started on Christmas Day. And I thought campaign was terrible last night. Like, honestly, I thought it was awful. And I didn't think he was good against the Magic. I didn't think he was good against the Bulls. I thought he might as well have not been out there yet on against OKC. He played 8 minutes. Here's his numbers. 0 points, 0 rebounds, 0 assists, 0 steals, 0 blocks. He took 1 field goal and he missed it. Like, he's not.
I mean, he's just basically giving Brunson a breather and not much of one.
Right, and that's my point. Like, he's not doing it. And I think what Tibbs wants point guards to organize the offense. To me, he's not really organizing anything. I mean, he came in yesterday, and most of these possessions are just like they're set. They take like fucking half the shot clock to eventually get the ball to Cat in some position where nothing has been created, and pretty much everybody is like standing around him, and then he's got to do some bailout shit. And a lot of times, you know what? It works because Cat he can bail it out. Like, he can bail him out. He's that talented. But that doesn't mean Payne is playing well. And it's just stupid. Like, if campaign isn't hitting threes and isn't running the offense in organized fashion, then what is he even doing out there? And then he has these like bozo plays, right? We've seen these a couple times where it's like he crashes the offensive glass or defensive glass even, and instead of grabbing the ball, he like tips it out, and now the other team is off for a transition fast break, or the other team now has an easy look at a 3 because of an offensive tip back or whatever. Like, these are dumb plays, and these are bad plays, and these are the type of plays that I think a coach like Tom Thibodeau especially gets very frustrated by. and that drive him absolutely nuts. And that's how he loses trust in you. And like, I'm not, they are not the same player. They're very different. They're different players and they're different levels of players. But like, Quickly has a little bit of like that campaign, like, especially when he first came in, like, I'm not sure what this guy's decision making is going to be when he comes in the game. And that would frustrate us as fans because we'd be like, well, you cannot care for the decision making and think it's a little off, like it's too reckless or, whatever at times. But the Knicks are winning his minutes and he's an efficient scorer and he gives you a pull-up threat and all these things. And that outweighs and it supersedes your concerns. And to Tibbs's credit and to Quickly's credit, over time, I think there was like they had they met in the middle somewhere, and he got the best out of Quickly, and Quickly obviously earned his trust. So that was a fruitful kind of coach-player relationship, even if it was something that we wanted to see more of or whatever. Payne has a similar recklessness, except he's nowhere near the team defender that Quickly was. He isn't the pull-up threat Quickly was, even though he shot super hot to start the season from three. But I don't think teams honor it ever in a way that they kind of had to honor Quickly. And I don't think he uses it to leverage anything the way Quickly can. And at that point, and then he's not. I don't think he's not shown. Maybe this changes, but you're talking about comparing like rookie Quickly to what is he? This is his 8th year, 9th year or something in the league campaign. I think he came in like a decade ago, actually. So he's been. He got drafted in 2014. So you're talking about his 11th year effectively in the NBA. 2014 or 2015, I don't remember. But like you would want to see better decision making from a veteran point guard and a better ability to get your team set up and a better, like, there was a possession yesterday in the 4th quarter, I think, where he dribbles in to the free throw line, picks up his dribble, and then he spends like 6 seconds pivoting around while everybody's cutting, desperately trying to get open for him. Like those are the possessions that are going to drive a coach like Tom Thibodeau nuts, and those are the possessions that lose you like your trust. And the reason I don't know. So this is why I'm not exactly losing my mind about it and banging the drum endlessly and, oh my God, I can't believe Tibbs hasn't done it yet. Tyler Kolek, to me, is a guy who can run pick and rolls effectively. He is, when he plays with the actual NBA players, I do not give a shit how he looks in garbage time when he's playing with Jacob Toppin and these fucking Frankenstein lineups that don't matter at all. I don't care what he looks like in those minutes. They don't matter to me. Because those are the minutes where it's like guys individually will go off, but they're also those guys individually can't go off when they play real high level NBA talent. Last time Tyler Kolek played was against the Utah Jazz, like real minutes. That's the last time he played. The Utah Jazz are obviously not the greatest team in the NBA, but they have real NBA players and everything. It's cool. Hey, he played them in actual basketball time too. He came in, he ran pick and rolls. He looked effective playing next to the actual NBA players on the team. He got them into organized offense. And I think there's a value to that. I think there's a value to that has two-way impact, even if Kolek himself is obviously no great shakes defensively. If you have an organized offense, you probably have better floor balance. If you have better floor balance, you probably are going to be better defensively, and you're probably going to be over the long haul. And your offense itself is going to generate higher quality looks because you're actually getting into higher quality offense. Like, I would like to see Tyler Kolek run a pick and roll with Karl Anthony Towns. I bet he can get Karl Anthony Towns some real easy looks that campaign won't, whatever. Like, I don't know what the reason is for them, but Kolek is just a smarter operator in pick and rolls. So if you're looking for something there, I think Tyler Kolek potentially could give you that. It's also possible he fails. But you know what? If he fails, so be it. Like, campaign is not giving you anything right now. He's not playing well. And if this was like, I'm sure you remember this. A lot of people remember. Like quickly started off his second year pretty poorly. Like he just couldn't make a shot forever. It was like a couple month period of time where he just couldn't make a shot. There were people that were like, let's give Deuce a shot over him. Let's give Grimes minutes over him and whatnot. And I think that would have been pretty harmful to Quickly as a young player, still trying to establish himself in the league, coming off of a nice rookie season. I think that would have really, really hurt his confidence. And that could have been something that hurt his time in New York in a significant way. Cam Payne isn't that. Cam Payne is a 10-year journeyman. This is a guy who has fought and scrapped and he does whatever he needs to stay in the league. He's talked about this, right? His goal is to never be out of the NBA because he experienced that. And that has changed how he approaches things and his energy and blah, blah. I don't think it's going to be some big crisis for Cam Payne personally or for the team, given how Payne is playing recently. If you play Kolek give him a shot for like 7 games, 2 weeks, whatever. See what he looks like in bench minutes, spelling Brunson. And if it's not great, okay, fine. You looked at it, didn't work, you go back to Cam Payne. If it does work, okay, great. Like now you know. So that's just where I look at it. I also, again, like I'm not going to lose my mind over, oh my God, why isn't Tibbs playing Tyler Kolek? We need to play him and Ariel Hukporti and Pacom Dadier and get the kids going. Like I don't subscribe to that. The Knicks are in a different point in time in their team building where they can't just be giving out minutes to young guys for the sake of giving minutes to young guys. And I don't care when people talk to me about, oh, well, look at how Kenny Atkinson is using Cleveland's depth and look at OKC and like, yeah, OKC is playing like one young guy that they drafted, right? Ajayi Mitchell. And that's mostly, I think, because they have injuries at the moment. I don't think he plays when Caruso is healthy. Whatever. Like, and I don't care about the Cleveland thing because it took Cleveland 2 years to get fucking actual depth on this team that they can use and play. So these are not good examples to me. The Knicks have depleted their depth to assemble the top line talent. Their depth is now populated of vetmins who do vetmin stuff. And then they have some young guys they drafted in a draft that was considered not great. And to this point has not yielded a number of contributors. Like I'm okay with Tibbs not going in the Kolek direction, even though I think that is what he should do.
Yeah, I mean, so it's interesting. Payne, what he doesn't give you is exacerbated now without Deuce. I know Deuce isn't really a great point guard setter, whatever, right now. He struggles with ball pressure a little bit. But, having another ball handler out there helps, right? And without that, I think some of Payne's flaws have been exhibited. I will say, though, a couple of points in Payne's defense. With him on the floor, the Knicks are actually +3 versus with him off. Obviously, that's limited minutes against benches, but this isn't a guy who's dragging down lineups, which is important when you're comparing to a rookie who potentially could have that impact. This is also a guy who's taking 11 threes per 100, hitting 40% of them. That is something you want, certainly next to a guy like Cat, who can exploit that gravity that Cat has in the post. And it is, the other stuff, I think there's a lot of stuff we don't care for. You mentioned some of the weird decisions on rebounds. Just generally as a decision maker, he leaves a lot to be desired.
He's very like off the cuff.
Yeah. There's not much of a plan, and frankly, he's off the cuff, and frankly, he's not talented enough to pay that off, right? I think even when Quickly was off the cuff, or there are other players a guy like Lou Williams who are a little more helter skelter. The talent level and the shot making was on another level from Payne. Right? Even his 3-point is a little bit of a slow and weird release. He can still get him off at volume, but and this isn't a guy with an extensive bag where he can get away with just being an improv heavy player. But you also don't want to, at this point in his career, you don't want to change who he is. But I think with Kolek, I've certainly felt like the shot is he's a capable shooter. I haven't seen much from Campaign as a defender to feel like, oh my God, you're going to kill the defense by playing Kolek relative to that. And it depends, like, it's like, I guess the question would be, can Kolek get up threes at volume like Payne and provide the, I know he doesn't leverage it to play make as much, but it does, it does punish teams who want to help on Cat, want to help on Bridges, right? I do wonder, if with Kolek, if Tibbs has that level of trust. And I also wonder that with the shortened stints, is he trying to send a message to Campaign, right? That settle down, you need to step up with Deuce out. And if you're unable to do that, then we'll go elsewhere. I think you really have to amaze him as a rookie. And even, I mean, the rookies I remember getting extensive minutes for Tibbs are really just Quickly and Grimes, right? Quickly was an on-off, monster from
he was
the
a
day
plus 7 yesterday, which is fucking hilarious.
I mean, his stats, the difference between this and rookie Quickly is I think the stats actually back it up, but it's also against a contender.
And into the game, they were basically down. What were they down? Like
25, I think, when he left.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's good to see him back. That is an interesting team long term. In terms of, I think they have to make a decision on Barnes and RJ at some point.
They should probably make a decision on their fucking head coach. What they should do.
Yeah. Donnie Darko not getting it done for you.
He's awful. He's honestly, I think he's the worst coach in the league.
But you really have to, and like even Quickly, he didn't. We wanted him to start, didn't start, right? Over a player who left a lot to be desired as a point guard, especially fitting next to Randall. And then you had Grimes, who was pretty good off the bat, didn't get any minutes despite Fournier being a complete sieve until kind of it was until like really the team got depleted, and then Grimes was good. That could be just the kind of thing where Grimes really, for the first couple of years, really even now, is not the kind of guy who's going to wow you with very loud play. I think he's doing more with the ball in his hands now, but he wasn't the guy who was going to like kill in practice, right? So unless you do that, it could be that and Kolek isn't that kind of player. Certainly when he plays with this level of talent, right? He's not a loud player in the same way. He has some flashy passes, but he's mostly a make the right play guy. Those are often very heady plays and plays that even other guys can't see. But I imagine he also just doesn't do that much of that because he's trying to fit in and he can't get away with the same stuff he probably could in college or summer league or G League, right? So, to your point, I would imagine the way Tibbs is thinking about this is he's trying to send Payne a message to adapt a little bit with Deuce out. And if he can't, then I think he's fine with the way Payne has played with Deuce in. And it's not like he brings nothing, right? There is the shooting. That's really kind of it. But it's a guy who doesn't turn the ball over. Has a 4-to-1 assist to turnover ratio. Again, limited minutes. But there are a few things that he brings that Tibbs may not either trust Kolek to bring, or just would feel like with Deuce back, all of these concerns get a little bit less concerning.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder if it's just trending towards Campaigns out of the rotation once Deuce gets back. I wonder that because I know Shamet has not played much, and has he even made a 3 yet since he's been back? I don't think he has.
His first game back, he had a couple.
Oh yeah, you're right, against the Wizards. I forgot about that. That was garbage time. That's why.
No, he played real minutes. It was like 10 minutes, but like he played.
Yeah, 11 minutes. Okay. Yeah. He made 2 threes.
That is the only game, though.
But like,
wow.
Yeah, he hasn't hit a 3 since then. But like, I like the way he's playing. I think his defense. I thought his defense yesterday was really good. His screen navigation in particular stands out as a strength, and it's not one that I was, I didn't know that he got over screens as well as he has so far. Anyway, yes, obviously you need the shots come around, but the difference, right? If you kind of look at since he came back, these are his minutes. He played 1 minute in garbage time against the Raptors on December 23rd. He did not play against the Spurs, or he played very minimally in that game. Then it's 10 minutes, 6, 11, 11. And then here's the last four: 14, 17, 21, 21. So I think Tibbs likes what he's seeing from Shamet, particularly on the defensive end. And, yesterday you saw, yes, he didn't make a three. He also got blocked on a three in the corner by Quickly, which was actually a pretty insane recovery from Quickly. I can't believe he got there. And it wasn't like he just tipped it. He swatted that shit to the ground. It was really impressive. But he had multiple really nice back cuts that got him easy layups. And again, the defensive screen navigation stuff stood out. And I think when Tibbs sees that, that's what he wants from a lot of his bench guys, right? Where it's like, hey, just play within yourself. Don't do stupid shit. Compete defensively, and we'll be fine. And I just think that the scales right now with Payne are really, really off, where it doesn't feel like his defense is, it's not disastrous or anything. So I'm not, this isn't some situation where he comes in and it's like, oh, well, now we can't defend anybody. No, that's not what it is. But I don't think he's not as good at getting over screens, right? He's a smaller guy. He's obviously going to be more prone to succumbing to mismatches because he's a smaller guy. And there are times where it feels like he gambles unnecessarily and whatever. Shamet seems more disciplined. He's got better size. He's more combative because of that size. And I think that allows for more effective switching. Like if you watch him yesterday, him and Hart were switching a lot. Him and McCall were switching a lot. I that to me is something that is real value. And so I see him obviously staying in the rotation. And then Deuce, we know he likes Deuce, right? He likes him at the point of attack. Clearly, the idea is they don't really view Deuce as a fantastic point guard or anything. But at this point, we also know that Tibbs doesn't view Cam Payne as a particularly fantastic point guard. So I just wonder if this all is leading to Deuce comes back and now Payne is the odd man out, or extremely you're the ninth man, but you're getting 4 minutes, 5 minutes, 6 minutes, something like that, and that's about it. So yeah.
Yeah,
all right.
I would no, I thought I was on mute. We'll see. I mean, I still would probably, yeah, I think it's interesting. So you'd say that would that be an 8-man rotation at that point?
Yeah, that'd still be an 8-man rotation, and that's not great to me, or not great. I mean, yeah, it's not great. You want more depth, I get it. It's also just these are your pieces. So, if he wants to go to an 8-man with that, I wouldn't love it. I'm just telling you what I think what I think might happen. I really think it's possible Cam Payne is out of the rotation here. But also this is why I think he should give Tyler Kolek a chance, because if Tyler plays well, you can go back to Payne if you need to. And if he plays well, then now you have a 9-man rotation when Deuce gets back. That's of value. Even if I'm less kind of into
Kolek's
the
a little
whole.
smaller too. He's 6'2", so that would be 6'2", 6'2", and then Shamet at 6'4" as your.
Well, you're just trying to
You're going to
steal some minutes
stagger.
against bench teams, though. You're not bench units. You're not obviously if teams are playing big or they're playing starters. Yeah, that's not great. But I mean, you can play against a team like the Raptors yesterday, or the Jazz, as we saw, or any number of teams in the league. You can get away with that and be fine. Not even just fine. You can maybe even win those minutes at times. But again, I just would like to see him get a chance, because I've seen everything I need to see from Cam Payne. It's not like anything's changing, right? He's either, when he plays well, he's hitting his pull-up threes and, he's doing cool stuff. And then when he's not, it's the pull-up three isn't going in and he's making bad or suboptimal decisions. And those are all various types of things that you have to consider.
Yeah, it's I mean, I think that the argument a lot of people would make, whether it's Kolek, whether it's I mean, Dadier and all that. Getting back to the whole 8-man rotation thing, is there an argument that I know this is a topic that's been belabored. It's not something that you or I like to talk about too much. The minutes debate. But is there, the argument people will make is, yeah, if you don't give guys minutes, they're never going to be able to prove themselves, right? And sure, you might say they don't prove themselves in practice, but an 8-man rotation, in December, January is not a solution. What's kind of your general thoughts on that? I know that's a topic that's been belabored, but I think you've avoided probably discussing it too much. But yeah, I mean, is that really an extreme scenario or extreme take that Tibbs has right now?
Is it extreme? Yes, it's extreme compared to what most other coaches do, right? I don't think that's much of an argument. That's actually indisputable. What Tibbs does with his rotations, forgetting just the minutes, but like kind of how he goes about it, right? You see routine things. Like you remember when we traded for Josh Hart, it was he would come in at like the 4 or 5 minute mark in each half, and then he'd play the rest of the half, right? That's not most coaches are not doing that. That's not normal. So yeah, that's yeah, and he routinely still does shit like this, right? Mikal Bridges plays the first 14 minutes of a half or whatever. Like you see this shit all the time. I would like to just point this out, and I know that they had garbage time yesterday, but Cam Payne played 21 minutes last night. Precious played 15 off the bench. I think against Chicago, Shamet, or against Milwaukee, or sorry, not against Chicago, against Orlando, I believe Shamet played 21 minutes and Achua played 22 minutes. So I think he is settling on getting these guys something like 15 to 20 minutes off the bench. The starters yesterday, 36 for Mikal, 38 for OG, 34 for Cat, 35 for Brunson, 38 for Josh Hart. Now, I think when Deuce comes back, right, because Cam Payne played 11 minutes last night. Let's say Deuce takes all 11 of the Cam Payne minutes, right? He takes all of those. I think you can give him a couple from OG, a couple from Mikal, a couple from Josh Hart. And now those guys are at a much more reasonable place. And now your rotation, even though it's just 8 guys, looks healthier. Now you're talking about, oh, Deuce is playing like 20-ish, maybe more minutes off the bench. Shamit's playing 20-ish minutes off the bench. Precious is playing 15, 20-ish minutes off the bench. That looks healthier and more sustainable than what we saw, over the last however long. Is that what he'll do? I don't know. I think it is what will happen. And my evidence to that point would be like looking at how he ran things after the OG trade last year until right before basically Randall and OG got hurt on the same day. But like towards the end of that run, he started kind of like, okay, now I figured out what I want my bench to look like. I figured out who I want to play, how I want to stagger my rotations, and how I want to mix and match and all those things. And I think those minutes towards the end started looking a lot more sustainable, a lot healthier. Unfortunately, injuries cropped up before that. Now, Deuce needs to get back. They should not rush him back. It's a hamstring strain. You got to be careful with that. They were careful with Precious when he strained his hamstring, and I think his was definitely more severe than Deuce's. So I'm fine with like kind of stretching this out, but you would like to see them reduced a little bit for sure. None of us are doctors, surprisingly. Neither me or you are doctors, much to our parents' chagrin. I think most people talking about this on Twitter are not doctors. I know for sure nobody talking about this on Twitter has access to their medical information, the Knicks' medical information on these players. They don't know what their workload plans is. They don't know what Knicks off days look like. They don't know what work they're doing. They don't know what they're doing treatment-wise. They don't know what they're doing rest recovery-wise. None of us know the totality of the picture. All we see are the minutes played and the rotations on the floor. That is all we see. We don't see anything else. Given that, while I understand and I think expressing the concerns that people have are fair, I think it is wrong that it is presented as an indisputable fact that playing this many minutes, these guys, these rotations is unsustainable and will inevitably lead to injuries and blah, blah, blah. I don't think that is, I don't know that that's true. I don't know that that's accurate. I don't know that that is correct. Like people will point to overuse, right? For why, look at what happened last year. Tibbs ran these guys in the ground, and that's what happened. Well, no. What actually happened is that, like, Randall got hurt on a play that had nothing to do with overuse, right? He fell on his shoulder, dislocated it. Okay, that has nothing to do with fatigue. OG hurt his elbow. Like, that has absolutely nothing to do with fatigue or anything. It was just a weird, we don't even know how it happened. It just happened, right? Okay. So now, because you lost two
Well,
of your
later
best,
on, he hurt his hamstring, right? Playing
right?
heavy minutes in the playoffs.
Okay, but that's a game. You still didn't have Randall. I believe at that point, Mitchell Robinson's out for the season, and Brunson was out for that entire first half. So, like, what are you gonna do? You're gonna punt the playoff game? We're gonna hey OG, we're gonna rest you, and we're gonna get Alec Burks out there to play the 4. Like, no, like, it's like Bogdanovich got hurt on a play that had nothing to do, and Bogdanovich was out then too because he got hurt on a play again that had nothing to do with fatigue or injury. So, like, you can tell me the minutes aren't sustainable and it's too much or whatever. What I'll tell you is I saw this team last year play a lot of minutes after OG and Randall go down. A lot of the same conversation. These minutes aren't sustainable. You can't keep playing these guys. And they sustained it for a pretty long ass time until they got more injuries that had nothing to do with fatigue. Really just wore them down. And I'm not saying the Knicks have some secret sauce when it comes to rest and recovery, or they discovered the special steroid that makes sure that you're never hurt or you never get tired. But they seem to be able, for whatever reason, to routinely push guys maybe minutes load in their minutes load in a way that other teams don't or can't. And the final part of this that I'll raise is ultimately this to me is not about anything other than Tibbs does not have depth pieces that he trusts can help him win NBA basketball games right now. Not enough of them anyway. I think he trusts Shaman. I think he trusts Deuce. I think he trusts Precious to some degree. Those are 3 guys off the bench I think he trusts. Everybody else, it is like
Sims, you don't think he trusts much?
I think he likes Sims. I don't think he trusts Sims. I think I actually don't even know if he likes pain. I think he tolerates campaign. I think
he has
likes
high
Sims.
pain tolerance.
Yes, I think he likes Sims. I don't think he cares for him too much as an NBA player. The rest of these guys like Tyler Kolek, Ariel Hukporty, Pacum Dadier, I have no idea how he feels about them. Well, the only thing I know is that he just doesn't trust them right now to win NBA basketball games and play NBA minutes. And
it seems to be with all 3 when they've actually gotten minutes. I was pretty encouraged by Dadier's first couple of performances. Since then, he's just seemed very tentative. It just looks like a guy who needs seasoning.
Ooh, jinx.
Yeah, I mean we're both Browns, of course we put seasoning on everything, in some form or another. And then Hukporty, I think after really wowing people, there's a lot of mistakes he makes from a big that just Tibbs is not. It's a non-starter for a guy like Tibbs, right? So I do think kind of on that note though, right? One piece they will be getting back who adds depth and could push it to a 9-man rotation is Mitch, but it's a tricky fit, right? Because you don't really want him playing with, I guess you'd really only want Mitch coming in for Cat with the starters, right? That probably, if that steals you 15 minutes a night for Cat, that'd be pretty good. And then Precious, I guess, is full-time 4 next to Cat. Is that how you, if and when Mitch comes back? It keeps getting pushed back. Now we're looking at February. That's a potential solution as well, right? Or another guy, obviously NBA body, but somebody with a lot of experience and obviously talent. So,
yeah. So like they need if you want him to play guys less, you need to get a better depth piece. Like I think we did this when they trade before they traded for Josh Hart. There was conversation about like, oh man, like Because anytime, a guy would go down, right, it was like, all right, quickly, you're playing fucking 47 minutes tonight. And like, we saw a lot of the same kind of, oh, well, these guys are playing a lot of minutes. And then Josh Hart comes, and all of a sudden, like, nobody was playing too many minutes, right? It was like, oh, this all works great. Like, this is awesome. Now, like, if he trusts Shamit, he trusts Precious to some extent, he trusts Deuce. If we all believe that, do you believe that? I believe that. I think those three guys you trust. Then you're talking about getting him one more guy, maybe 9-man rotation. Everybody's happy. Can we get one more guy? Do we have the avenues? Do we have the assets? Does the trade make sense? Who is the guy? I don't know. I have no answers for that. I have suggestions. I have guys that I potentially like, but I don't have the answer to that. That's not up to me. That is up to the front office to figure out.
It's a narrow window, right? It's it's a team that is anything positive on Mitchell Robinson at this point, that can match his salary, that can give us something valuable to us in return, and or has some interest in that Washington pick or like Dadier, right? Which is a very narrow set of options there, if they exist.
Yeah, and so like we don't know what that looks like. All I'm saying is, if you want the minutes to come down, I think Shamit coming back is a huge deal. Deuce coming back whenever he comes back will be a huge deal, and Precious playing less CTE ball will be a pretty big deal too. Those are the things you have right now. If you would like another piece, then now you're talking about trades, and I don't like the trade discussion can go round and round and round. End of the day, these are the trade assets, right? Mitchell Robinson, his contract. Precious Achiuwa, potentially his contract. Bunch of vet min guys. Second round picks. A 2030 first round pick swap. A heavily protected pick from Washington that ultimately is probably going to end up being a high second next year. And that is about it for right now. Those are your trade assets. So whatever you think you or whoever you want needs to be acquirable with some combination of those assets. And I'm not entirely sure that they make a move because they are very limited in not just what those assets could yield, but also, are those players worthwhile? Do those players matter for this year and years moving forward? Because if not, then it's not worth making the move. The other part is you'll have more options in the offseason. You can make more imbalanced trades in the offseason. And Mitchell Robinson is not a player that I think is going to be a long-term Knick. I would be surprised if he's on. I don't think he'll be on the roster for sure opening day next year. But given how late it's going to be before he gets back, I think the rumor is now end of January, early Feb, potentially. Given that, if he has no trade value, and I don't think he has trade value at this point, to the point that you have to attach assets, which would then be the value you're giving up. That's what teams you're trading that package to, that's what they would really be after. They're not really after Mitch Robinson, they're after those assets. He comes back. Precious has been okay. Sims has been okay. Like, if Mitch comes back and he is good, maybe not as good as he was at his best, but he's good, I think that means something, not just for your depth, not just in terms of like the minutes you can play. We've already talked about several times about how Cat and Mitch together could be a really useful combination. But that also changes his value now in the summer as an asset, as a standalone asset. So it's a tough needle to thread for them. But they have shown the ability to pull a rabbit out of their hat. We've heard reports. They've been reporting for a while. Oh, the Knicks were listening on Jericho Sims. There was real interest in Jericho Sims from the Pacers. I know that for sure. Before they traded for Thomas Bryant. So you have to see how, maybe something comes out of that. Could they get Alec Burks back for Jericho Sims? Maybe. I don't know. Just throwing out an idea. But does that, and we know Tibbs loves Alec Burks.
Is he playing well this year? Is he healthy?
He's barely playing. Miami's barely using him. So I don't know. The point being is there are ways to get players and potentially guys. The other thing which is possible, and I'm probably more bullish on this idea because Shwin showing my cards here. Like, I've always liked TJ Warren, even though he's just like a straight chuck. Like, I just think he's a good scorer, and I've always liked his scoring game.
Especially
Even
bubble TJ.
oh man, bubble TJ, but I mean, he was basically Michael Jordan. But like, he's been playing. They've had him down in the G League this entire time, which I think is interesting. They have already signed 2 other sons that played with Mikal Bridges to the team, right? Campaign and Landry Shamet. I find it interesting that TJ Warren is still hanging out with us in the G League. And I believe there's a window where at some point, because of how the prorated things work, they can at some point sign him to a standard contract for the rest of the season and fit him under that second apron. So I think there's a world where the Knicks don't make any move. And I think they maybe resigned themselves to that just based on what they've and look, these things can change. That maybe it gets closer to the deadline. A guy you like, his value gets lowered because the team's like, you know what, we're not getting what we want, but we need to move on from this anyway. So let's just take what we can get. That's possible. But it would not surprise me if the ultimate move is, let's bring TJ Warren up and then let's see if there's anything that shakes out in the buyout market that we can get done. But that's truly what I believe is kind of like the sum total of the picture here. It's a hard situation because of the moves they've had to make to build out. I mean, look, losing Hartenstein really hurt them because if you did the Mikal Bridges trade obviously before Hartenstein leaves, and then you can get Cat even if Hartenstein had left or Hartenstein had stayed. Sorry, I think that changes so much for your team, and obviously now you don't have that option, right? Because whatever, but like because Hartenstein left, they had to make moves to kind of to get that top line talent in and build out a real cohesive starting five. Because look, we spent the entire summer pretending that, well, Precious and Randall could be really good, and we'll get to see Randall at the 5. And oh man, what if he's unlocked at the 5? Like we did a whole thing. I think it's obvious that would have been a disaster given what we've seen so far this year. So kudos to them for doing what they needed to do to assemble this top line talent in the starting 5. But because of that, because that's where their work had to go, because that's where their assets had to go, the depth is where they're lacking, and that's what they'll need to address moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, I tend to agree. It doesn't seem like you're going to get a player back that can have as much impact as Mitch. Partly because Mitch is more valuable to us than most other teams, right? There aren't a lot of contending teams who are looking for a center. It's to give an example, right? I mean, there's guys on the Clippers. I know you've been into Amir Coffey for a while.
But like I'm into Amir Coffey, but at the end of the day, Amir Coffey's like he's just a jag, right? He's just a guy. He's not like
the upside with Mitch is better than anyone we could get. That's that's beyond dispute. The question is, the median outcome, right? But even the medium outcome, the thing is this, right? If and when Mitch comes back, the injury risk should be a lot lower because there isn't going to be a game. I don't think there's a single game where he'll be asked to play more than 20 minutes max if Precious and Mitch are in foul trouble. So his injury risk is going to be lower if and when he comes back. Even that role might be ideal for him at this point, right? Especially given his limitations, given that he's most effective. Imagine being able to just deploy Mitch, more like a scalpel than a chainsaw. I don't know. It's like you can
a
use
chainsaw. Let's get your ass raw.
I think you said something that made me think of Chop Suey earlier too. That's that is actually going to make him more effective, right? He doesn't have to play 30 minutes or in lineups with poor spacing or in a situation where he has to hit free throws. So that's going to be pretty valuable. And I think the thing is he's a one position guy. So normally you wouldn't say this about the depth he provides, but I think it can cascade, right? If he gives you 15 minutes at the center position, then Cat only has to play 33, right? That also means that Precious can play all his minutes at the 4. And, if you trust Precious next to Cat, that's another 15 minutes. So you can reduce OG from maybe 36, 37 down to 33, right? Because Precious isn't backing up 2 positions now. And in that case, cascades down. I mean, that cascades down too, right? Because now OG doesn't have to back up maybe the three as much. A little, he doesn't have to play some three. So you have those minutes split between Hart, Bridges, and Shamit, right? So I think, especially for OG, Mitch coming back could help quite a bit.
He can
As
also
much
be
as a wing would, right? And,
like,
and
he can
OG,
also,
let's put the cards on the table. OG is the biggest injury risk, by far, and not only in terms of the probability,
not
but the
Josh Hart,
impact.
not Josh Hart.
Well, Josh Hart got injured last year and it hurt, right? But
But like he got hurt in, like, I don't know. He hurt his rib. It was a very weird. It was his abdomen, right?
ab,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Um,
But I think we
he's gonna
win
do.
that
He's got
series
to
if
do.
he
He's
doesn't
got
get
to do.
hurt.
Yeah, he's got to do more crunches, man. That's all it is. He's got to.
He's got to stop eating those fucking Mike and Ikes.
Yeah. No, going back to OG. The reason, like, not just OG, Mikal too, and Hart, those guys, their defense will get amplified if Mitch comes back. In the minutes they play with him anyway, they can be way more aggressive. They can be looking to shoot passing lanes. Like, they can cheat more. Like, you can just do a lot more when you have that backline rim protection. And this is not to. I think Cat's, again, like, I think he's really played as well as you can expect defensively. I don't think he's a space cadet out there. He is not routinely out of position. He's not routinely not competing. He's not, like, I think he's doing what you can expect from him. But at the end, but when Cat is your backstop, you are playing risk mitigation defense to some extent, a large part of the time. You're not necessarily able to be aggressive and try and kind of like take the game to the opponent in some ways. Mitch gives you that opportunity. Even with Precious back there, Precious is not the rim protector, obviously, that Mitchell Robinson. He's not the defensive rebounding force that Mitchell Robinson is. Like, it is not the same. So that's interesting. Also, the other reason that I'm warming up more to just bringing Mitch back for the year, like, I would like to see Precious go back to just situational, because that to me is ideal. Precious being a situational player is ideal because there are, like, he's actually situational because there are games where what he can do and what he does do maybe is the kind of change up you need, right? We saw this last year in the playoffs against Embiid, where Precious came in at the end of game 4 and did a great job on Joel Embiid. We saw that this year against the Spurs at the end of that game and on Christmas Day, where he comes in and he stays in the game late, and him and OG do a great job at the 4 and 5, kind of containing Victor Wembanyama, who was going fucking bonkers in that game. So, like, for whatever, like, I don't know, Precious is a weird guy where he just, the sum total of what he is a pretty mediocre NBA player, but then he has these high flashes and these high leverage moments against these kind of high level players that really stand out. I mean, even if you remember the last game of the regular season against the Bulls, where he's like in an ISO situation against DeRozan, and he stopped that shit. Like, he's just capable in these high leverage situations to be an option. But that's
I mean,
kind of like what.
he's the most switchable guy after OG, I would say, on the roster for sure.
Right. So and so it allows you to be like a switch heavy 5 group. But we know that's not what Tibbs wants to do it as his base defense. So because of that, like, there's real limitations to it. But that's what you want from a situational guy, right? Where it's like, oh, this isn't working. But we have this option. Let's try that out right now. So there's a lot of value, I think, just even to the existing roster of Mitch coming back, even if it doesn't necessarily increase the night to night rotation depth.
Yeah, I mean, I think it has to, at least before the playoffs. I think I would agree on this Precious should be situational thing when we get to the playoffs, because at that point, if we've gotten everyone there healthy, they're going to be playing 38, 40 minutes. That's what happens, not just with Tibbs teams. But you're going to want to steal some minutes, or you're going to want to expand to 9 men with someone else, right? I think if you take, I think for most of the regular season, like, ideally they want to be at 9 men. Maybe the fact that Tibbs is riding this 8-man thing a little bit longer is he knows either Deuce, either this 8 or 9, either Deuce or Mitch is probably imminently returning, so he knows he can go back to a 9-man rotation. Maybe that's an indication. I don't know, but I don't think Precious becomes situational until at least the playoffs.
Yeah, it's yeah, it'll be interesting to see that. I guess last thing we can talk about before we get out of here. We saw our former Knicks last night, Emmanuel Quickly and RJ Barrett. We saw what was a very listless performance overall from the Raptors, I would say. Like, even when the game was close, it didn't really feel... It felt like the Knicks were doing stupid shit more than the Raptors were, gaining any momentum in a serious way. What did you make? What did you make of that? Because that might have been the worst. Like, we've had some dominant, outright, we just destroyed some teams, but that felt like one of the most hopeless opponent performances I've watched all season against the Knicks, and the Knicks didn't even particularly play well that last night.
Yeah, I mean, Brunson didn't have a good performance. I mean, this is not a winning team. This is not a team that's trying to win anything. This is a very young team. I mean, put yourself. This was us a couple years ago, right? This was the Knicks a couple years ago, right? Trying to figure out maybe some less than ideal roster fits, right? Can you imagine the Knicks being on the other end and us playing, one of the top 5 or 6 teams that's slumping a little bit, but still considered a contender, and we go to their house and we get blown out, but it's competitive for a half, and Quickly had 22 again. He looks really good, and there's some, they have some. Chris Boucher averaged 90 points per 36 yesterday. on what 150 true shooting.
This guy never misses a shot against the Knicks. If he played the Knicks every game, he'd be like the best. He'd be what people think Naz Reid is.
But that's what it looks like when a contender plays. Just and the Knicks.
What do you think he's shooting on the season from 3?
Like 19% or something.
31.9%. Like, it's so funny. Like, by the way, here's okay. This is what he shot. He played the Knicks on December 23rd. He shot 4 of 5 from 3. This is what it's been since then: 2 of 5, 1 of 2, 1 of 4, 1 of 2, 0 of 0, 0 of 0, 2 of 2 against the Knicks last night. So,
yeah, the Knicks didn't play particularly well, but they still had the best, at least 2 players on the floor. I thought Quickly played well, but on most nights you're taking OG Anunoby over him, or Bridges. So this is a team where we're going to have more often than not 4 of the best players on the floor. And Cat didn't. I think Cat had 1 rebound midway through the second quarter, finished with 13. Brunson didn't play well, but it didn't matter, right? You had other guys. They're just this is a big talent mismatch. And to your point, you have guys working back from injuries for Toronto. RJ is, Quickly is. It is interesting that when the Knicks have kind of played a little sloppier against even teams like Charlotte and Washington, those teams have made them pay, and Toronto really just ran out of gas in the second half. It's just it was pretty, much. It was a mismatch. I know you had criticisms for Darko, and this is just a roster that it's not a roster built. They have really Quickly RJ, Scotty, and Dick, and then the rest of the guys at some point, with the possible exception of Pirtle, because I think they like him a lot. These are moving parts that are here to provide a veteran presence, right? I did want to ask this. One, you can talk about Darko as well. Do you think they have to make a choice between Scotty Barnes and RJ? As RJ's start to the season made that maybe a little bit more of a difficult proposition than maybe it was a year ago?
No, I don't think they trade Scotty. I think they're too committed to him. He hasn't even started the extension they gave him, right? So he got a max extension. I don't think there's a chance in hell they trade him.
Do you think he fits with RJ?
No, I never thought that he fits with RJ. But like that's just, you trade RJ, right? I mean, that's what it is. I never thought they traded. I've always thought they did the trade because they wanted Quickly, and RJ was cool for them as like token Canadian guy. And they could, his contract didn't really matter to them because they weren't doing anything the next couple of years anyway. And like we know that, look, he's got 2 years left on his contract after this. We know how this works, right? As less time remains in the contract, a lot of these guys go from, oh my God, who would want this contract, to, oh, okay, that's not bad. I wouldn't mind having that for a couple of years or a year, or whatever it is. Ultimately, this is going to end with RJ getting traded. He doesn't fit with Barnes. I don't think Barnes, RJ, and Quickly all fit together well. I don't really know why you'd even want to try to fit them together, because they're just not they're not a very dynamic offensive.
Well, I think
three.
I think IQ probably fits with one of those guys. We've
IQ,
seen him
but
fit
like,
with everywhere.
but Barnes is better than RJ. Like, I don't know what else to say. Like, I know that RJ is, whatever.
Well,
He's
he's
our
improved his
guy.
shooting and might be a better finisher at this point than Scotty. He's getting to the rim a lot. He's playing well. Scotty's probably a better defender when engaged, but I haven't seen that in a couple of years, to be honest.
I don't know, man. I think RJ is just, he's putting up better numbers, I guess. But what is the sum total of his numbers? It's nothing spectacular. He doesn't really play off the ball well. This is his career season, I guess, and he's at 55.3 true shooting, which, just for posterity's sake, Brunson over the last 3 weeks is at 56 true shooting, and we're all like, oh my God, what's wrong with Jalen Brunson? So, it's nice that he's passing better, but most of the advanced numbers still don't like RJ at all. He's mostly just an accumulator of numbers versus being a particularly impactful player. And him and Barnes don't make sense together, and Scotty Barnes was their number 4 overall pick, right? Like, there's a organizational commitment to him that is just going to make him more valuable to them than RJ. RJ's a guy they got in trade. Scotty Barnes is the guy that Masai picked 4th overall, and he was the guy that they decided to build their team around once they pivoted into this retool or whatever, and moved off a lot of their vets. So I just don't see a world where they pick, I don't see a world where they pick trading Barnes over RJ. I mean, maybe, I guess, if they got some monster haul for him, but then are they going to get a monster haul for Scotty Barnes? Because I just don't know what team is looking at Scotty and is like, oh, well, if we got him, that would change everything. And he's just not at that point in his career. Like, he's still at the point in his career, and they're at the point with him as a player where they're still going to be buying into, like, tapping into his upside and unlocking him and all that stuff.
I think it's interesting to think about. Maybe RJ becomes do you see RJ maybe having some positive trade value that they recoup, given his start?
I think he has more value as there's less time on his contract. So I don't anticipate him. He's not going to get moved this year or anything like that. And I don't think he would get moved in the offseason, but by next year's trade deadline, that feels like a pretty decent time to move him, where a team that maybe is, like, interested in him can see, okay, well, we'll see what he looks like the rest of the year, and then after this year is an expiring contract. So no huge deal for us there. I think that's where he is. And I don't know when RJ Barrett's going to get to this point in his career. Maybe it'll never happen. But at some point, I think the ultimate kind of pathway for him to be a valuable piece on a serious team, a playoff team, contending team is probably better, is being a guy who comes off the bench and can run your offense for a bit and give you some volume production, but ultimately is not going to field in your closing lineups. He can be a 6-man, but he's a weird 6-man almost in the way, like, he's probably not going to close games for you. Whereas a lot of other 6-men, right, you're like, okay, well, this guy can close games for us somewhat consistently. I don't think RJ ever is going to be that, unless he improves as a 3-point shooter, which, maybe the book's not closed there. But he's got to be a way better 3-point shooter, way more willing 3-point shooter. Not willing, willingness is wrong, but way more capable 3-point shooter than he has shown to date so far in his career. Until then, I just don't know what team is going to look at him and feel very strongly about him. So I think you're looking at it like he's a salary filler type guy in a year's time in a trade. That would be my guess. But
Yeah, that's fair.
But yeah, Darko's terrible. They should fire him. They should probably fire him aside too. He's been a poor GM now for an extended period of time. And they should probably trade Jakob Pertl, who I don't know if he'll ever have more value in trade than he has right now, which means that the Raptors won't trade him because they never trade anybody at their peak value because Masai sucks. Good news for them. The road gets easier tonight. They only have to play at Cleveland, so I'm sure they'll come out strong and come out victorious in that game. All right. That's it. That's our show for today. I hope everybody enjoyed it. Stacy, let me know where they can find you. Plug anything you'd like to plug.
You can find me at Stacy Patton 89 on Twitter, X. Nothing to plug, yeah.
I have nothing to plug myself, so I'll plug all the work at Strickland. This pod will be coming out, should be coming out today on Thursday, and recording a pod with Prez and a first-time guest that should be dropping tomorrow as well. So check that out. Thank you to our sponsor, Bet Online. Go Knicks, and I will see you soon. Peace.